By far, one of the most common mistakes that beginner gardeners and even experienced gardeners make each season is that they don't have a plan. And it can be a lot. There's certainly tons of things to think of when you're gardening, but don't start thinking about it after you've begun gardening. What am I going to grow? Where am I going to put it all? Do I have the tools that I need? Do I have everything that is going to set me up well for the coming growing season? For me, I like to map out exactly what it is I'm going to be growing and exactly where it is that I will be growing it. And then I can set the timer. Then I know exactly when to start my seeds inside, when to start my seeds outdoors. It also helps me with succession planting, so I'm not wasting any space in my garden, because I know that if I'm growing something in this bed here that is going to be removed from the bed in a couple of months, then I have some room to plant some other things. What are those other things? And that's the key to planting your garden. You can find garden planners online that work wonders. For me, I'm old school. I like to do it by hand. I have a scale diagram of my yard and I get to plot things out. And once I have the big things plotted out, the planters, the raised beds, the containers, then I can start to zone in on these specific things and decide exactly what it is that I want to plant in them this growing season. Another common mistake that beginning gardeners often make is just really not being connected with their soil. Whether it's in an in-ground bed like this, or raised beds, or in containers. There's a difference in the soil, both in structure, nutrition, and pH. And your soil content is a huge consideration, especially when it comes to containers. Because these are enclosed spaces, they are kind of their own ecosystem. You can't just plant anything that you want into a container and expect it to grow. For example, blueberries. You can't just take a blueberry bush and put it into a container, fill it up with potting soil, and expect that you're going to have a huge harvest of blueberries. Why? Because blueberries require highly acidic soil, between 4.5 and 5.0. And if you're planning on growing potatoes, like I do in these grow bags here, the soil needs to have a really good amount of potassium, because potatoes are heavy feeders. They need a good amount of nitrogen, a decent amount of phosphorus, but they thrive on potassium. And if there's not enough K in your soil, your potato harvest is going to leave you wanting. You're also going to want to make sure that you're conditioning, amending, sanitizing, and revitalizing your soil ahead of the growing season. This is going to keep your soil nice and healthy and your plants growing big and strong. Another common mistake that is super easy for beginning gardeners to make has to do with watering. It is so easy to either overwater or underwater your plants. So the key is to walk your garden every day and check the soil and see, does it seem dry? If so, maybe it could use a little bit of water. Did you get rain overnight? You're probably not going to be watering for the next day or two. It's easy to get under the impression that good gardening just means going out and watering your garden at the same time every single day. But that's not true. Consistent watering doesn't mean on some arbitrary timeline. It means to water consistently when your plants need it. So check out the soil, see how things are doing. If it's too wet, don't water. If it's a little bit dry, give them a drink. If you overwater your plants, you're inviting disease, you're inviting rot, and you're going to kill your plants. And a lot of plants are much more forgiving to underwatering than overwatering. So when it comes to adding water to your garden, err on the side of letting things dry out a little bit. You can pretty much always count on being able to quench their thirst, but if you overwater them, chances are they're done for. Another mistake that's commonly made by beginning gardeners is not having a full grasp on the amount of growing space that you have. Some of the things that you have to make sure that you understand is that eventually the plants that you're starting inside are going to need to have a home outside. So if you end up starting 20 tomato plants, you're going to need somewhere outside to put them when the time comes. And this is why it's so important to plan your garden ahead of time, so you know exactly what you're going to be growing and you know where you're going to grow it. Another common mistake that beginning gardeners can make is not tracking the sun. It's not understanding where the sun is in the sky and how it hits your garden. For me, my garden is south facing, which means it gets soaked in sun all summer long. But that also means that my front yard is north facing. So literally, the sun never touches anything right here up against the front of the house. If I wanted to grow anything that needed full sun or even partial sun, 4 to 6 hours, I would have to push things further out into the yard. So the house won't be shading things, and I'll be able to grow some stuff that the sun is going to touch from time to time. And the same is true the other way around. If you have plants that love partial shade or even full shade, you definitely don't want to be putting them into a spot that gets full sun. Make sure you understand the sunlight requirements of your plants before you put them in the ground. This raised bed here that I installed newly for this season is a prime example of what I'm talking about. I put this in a spot that I knew got drenched in morning and early afternoon sunlight. And just a few hours later, we're entirely in the shade. This bed here only gets between 4 and 6 hours of direct sun every single day. So for those plants that I would want to grow that need full sun, which is 8 or more hours per day, I definitely don't want to be growing them in this space. Another easy mistake to make as a beginning gardener is to not use mulch. Mulch is a great way to retain moisture and keep a steady temperature in your soil. Whether you use wood chips, straw, dry leaves, or even grass clippings, mulch is a great way to help with water retention in your soil, so you're not watering as often as you would otherwise need to because the soil won't dry out as quickly. It also does a great job regulating the temperature of your soil. Mulch also does a really good job conditioning your soil. Because it's organic material, it'll break down. The microbes and the worms that live in your soil will eventually pull it down in and will basically create a wood chip compost for you. It also serves as a great weed barrier. Now it's not perfect, but because laying mulch down actually keeps the top couple or few inches of your soil nice and open, any weeds that emerge aren't going to have a chance to really anchor to your soil, which gives you the opportunity to easily pull them out as soon as they emerge. And that brings us to the last thing that can absolutely trip you up as a beginning gardener, and that's going too big too quickly. Gardening is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to grow every single thing that you've ever wanted to grow in your very first 1 or 2 seasons of gardening. Space it out. Remember, this takes time. It also takes experience. Some things are not nearly as easy to grow as others, and some stuff will even take years of growing before you can even do your first harvest. And also, it's your garden. Grow what you like. Don't just grow stuff because it's what people typically grow in their gardens. If you love tomatoes, go all out. Grow as many tomatoes as you can handle. If you don't like kale, don't grow kale. For my money, garlic is one of the easiest things to grow in the garden. And I grow a lot of it. But I don't grow it because it's easy. I grow it because I love garlic. Grow things that you love to eat. If you don't like to eat eggplant, but you've chosen to grow eggplant, then you better be in an eggplant competition of some sort. Because otherwise, why are you growing it? You're wasting space in your garden on growing something that you don't love, and at the end of the day, you're not going to enjoy eating. So keep these things in mind as you plan your garden for the coming season, and you will graduate from beginning gardener to expert in no time. Happy growing.